I must thank the EAT-Lancet Commission for producing a beautiful report. I do not know if the participants here, those who are present here, have gone through the entire report. It is not easy to go through a report which is so dense in digital form. So I will start with Dr. Soumya, because as Sumati mentioned, somehow nutrition gets a backseat when there are luminaries like Director General of ICAR and member Agriculture and Food, etc. of NITI Aayog. So, Dr. Soumya, I have always been wondering that despite a global consensus that plant-based diets are more nutritious, more healthy, recommended for better health, do the health indicators of Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan, which are predominantly vegetarian states in India, do the health indicators show better health in these states as compared to largely meat-eating states like West Bengal, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc.? What does the data show? What is your experience?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Siraj Hussain. So I think it's complex, but let me try to answer this question. So data on health indicators comes from a few sources. One, of course, is the National Family Health Survey, which is undertaken every 5 years, and the last one was published, in the middle of COVID, 2021. The next round, the NFHS 6, is going on and should be, I think next year we should have the data. There used to be the NNMB, the National Nutrition Monitoring Board, that used to do surveys in urban and rural areas to look at dietary intake. Now those surveys were stopped in around 2013-14. The NNMB was wound up, and so we have had no Indian survey on diets till the ICMR conducted the DAB survey, the Dietary Biomarker Survey, which has been completed, and again we are waiting for the data. So that will be really good because it will give us household patterns of intake, and also micronutrient levels will be estimated in the blood. Then there was the ICMR in-diab survey, which specifically looked at non-communicable diseases. This was done in, across the country, 30 states, but took a long time. So it started somewhere around 2008-9, and it went on till 2020. If you look at that one, which is why I'm saying that one is because we know today the burden of disease in India has completely shifted to the non-communicable diseases. So over 65% of deaths in India today are due to non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, leading to heart disease, stroke, and kidney disease. That's increasing extremely rapidly, both in rural and urban areas. And in the last 25 years, the Global Burden of Disease study shows complete shift. So reduction in infectious disease mortality, reduction in child and maternal health deaths, which used to be very high. So those things we have done very well. But a tremendous increase, not just in deaths due to NCDs, but premature mortality. So people who die before the age of 70, that's what the WHO actually says is preventable deaths, because you should not die before the age of 70, and most of those deaths in India are due to non-communicable diseases. So when you see which states are very high, it's the ones you mentioned: Punjab, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, then Goa, Karnataka, Gujarat, that we consider traditionally the more developed states, higher incomes, better standard of living, better education, literacy. Those are the states with the highest burden of diabetes, and shocking levels: 1 in 3, 1 in 4 people with diabetes. Goa 40%, Punjab also around 30 to 40%. And if you look at the states in central India, which are higher in undernutrition, there the diabetes rates are lower. But again, what is very concerning in those states like UP, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh is that the pre-diabetes is very high. So we cannot say that these states are safe and that they have escaped the non-NCD. They are in the next in line. In the next 5 to 10 years, all these pre-diabetics will become diabetic unless there is a very solid intervention. You can prevent them from becoming diabetic, so that's the good news. But if we don't, then the entire country is going to shift to having a very high burden of diabetes and hypertension and abdominal obesity, what are called the metabolic risk factors. And once you have those risk factors, then it's a matter of time before you get your first heart attack, your stroke, or your kidney disease, all of which are silent. Kidney disease, extremely silent. Huge burden on the health system, and projections are that the percentage of our GDP that's going to be spent on treating people with, because you live long. If you get health care, you will live. But the burden on the health system will be very, very high. So this is why we see dialysis demand today going at a rate which we cannot meet. Strokes, heart attacks, how many hospitals will we build? So the solution is going to lie in prevention. And one of the major factors in prevention is going to be diet. So I don't think it's that much to do with being vegetarian or non-vegetarian. In fact, when you look at other risk factors like anemia, western side of the country eating mostly wheat, if you divide the country in half, vertically, usually we say north and south, but if you put a line through the center, east eats rice, the west eats wheat. There's more anemia in the west because the wheat also binds, the phytate binds iron. So the iron absorption, even if you're eating more iron, because the phytate is binding it, is not getting absorbed. So there are factors to do with that as well. The northeast is probably, and Kerala are the best in terms of anemia. So the three burdens we have are undernutrition. So we still have stunting, wasting, and underweight in children, quite high rates. Second is obesity and metabolic diseases going up. That's the double burden. And the triple burden is your anemia and micronutrient deficiencies. You can be very obese and be eating a lot and still be very anemic. This is the tragedy. And within a same household, you could have a mixture of all the three. You can have a malnourished child, an obese adult, and an anemic woman. So at the household level, at the community level, and the individual level, you have these three things which are happening together at the same time in India. And as you know, the anemia prevalence among women and children has remained high despite all our national programs. It's remained above 50% anemia. And malnutrition has been coming down, but slowly. But obesity, on the other hand, has gone up. And globally, they have said that for the first time in the world, the number of obese children has gone up, has crossed the number of undernourished children globally, not in India. In India, obesity under children is still growing, but still low. Undernutrition is more, but globally, obesity has overtaken undernutrition. And that's, again, many of the drivers that this EAT-Lancet Commission is talking about are responsible.
Okay, so it means that plant-based diets alone are not a real guarantee of good health. The food has to be more nutritious, more diversified. Yes. So I come to you, Dr. Ramesh Chand. Sir, I will not be asking you about the subjects which are generally of interest to people: fertilizer subsidy reforms, MSP procurement, PDS lower coverage, Narega, monument of failure and all that, because I'm sure he has tried his best, but we know that these are difficult reforms. So I'll ask you something easier, sir. Now, it is generally, there is a consensus that we need more millets in our diets. And in fact, Shri Anna, etc. was being propagated. We took a lead there. But I know, having been in the government, and now, sir, you also know, and DG ICAR also knows, that it is very unlikely that any government will ever allow procurement of millets at the same scale at which wheat and rice are procured. So, sir, my question is, there are any number of schemes now, both by the center and the states, where money is directly going to women. So is it not possible to reach out to women so that they use that money to buy millets?
In terms of possibilities, there are so many things, but let's be pragmatic. When I prepared a report on including millets in PDS, the biggest opposition came from the organization which at one time was headed by Siraj Saab. It was FCI. They outrightly rejected this idea. They said its storability is very difficult. Rancidity is so rapid compared to rice and wheat. And the biggest argument which they give, and to some extent I tend to agree with that, and that is also in the topic regional dimensions of this. You see, millets are important for Rajasthan, they are important for Karnataka, Maharashtra, but there are many states like Odisha, maybe started Odisha Millet Mission. But you look at that in the total cereal, 93% is rice. The percent of millet is not even single digits. It is just in the 0.0 something, that kind of things. So we have rice and wheat, we often say FCI, they are the crops of national importance. They are widely consumed even if they are not staple food in some states, but you will find that there will be some consumption in the form of bread or in some ways. So in the case of millet, what is mentioned in this regional dimension of nutrition is very, very important. Karnataka found it important. They are procuring it. And I think since they are procuring, they will also be using it in the PDS. So if we want millets to be a promoter, the way our system is designed, I would like to say that we cannot put everything on the center. We have to see what center need to do and where states should proactively play the roles. Once states are given this option and resources, please implement MSP in millet, pulses and all those things, crops which are of regional dimension. You please do it. States simply, this feeling why we should take it on our head. Center is announcing MSP, etc. They announced PDS, let them do it. I think that will not work. We can promote millets, but we have to see to it that center and state, this agreement, that there are some responsibility of center, there are some responsibility of the states, and they should procure it, they should store it, and responsibility of center is to pay for it. Otherwise, they are required to pay for wheat and rice, so center should bear the cost of these kind of things. So this, to my mind, is the approach which we should be adopting, giving money to women, again, all kind of things. We may be feeling that millets are very nutritious. You take views of poor people, low-income people. It is going out of their plate. Over time, if you look the data, per capita intake of millets, why rich people is increasing, and that why low-income people is declining. Because culturally, they feel wheat and rice, we have been deprived of consuming the superior cereal. These people are telling us to consume inferior things, and themselves they want to consume rice and wheat. So those things are also there, those factors. The biggest factor which is coming in the way of millet, despite all the emphasis, international year, etc., gentlemen, per capita production of millet has declined till 3 years back. I'm not so sure whether things changed in last 3 years, because now population growth is very low. So if millet production is growing by 1%, even then per capita production will be rising. But till 3 years back, when I wrote piece in Hindu, per capita production of millet was declining. When per capita production is declining, how you can expect people to consume more millets? Unless a breakthrough happen in the production of millets and nutrition quality of millet improves, I think it will not be acceptable. One more dimension of millet, maybe Dr. Saab can throw more light on it in his session. I compared nutrition composition of single millet with rice and wheat. No millet, single millet, is superior than wheat in all respects. There are some respects in which wheat is superior. There are some respects in which bajra is superior. So when we are saying millets, if we really want that benefit nutrition benefit of millet should accrue to people, we need to promote complex of millets. We need to promote simultaneously 5, 6 kind of millets. So you will find as a group millets have a superior nutrition compared to wheat and rice. But individually that superiority is not high and it is not across the board. Those are also the aspects. So that's why diversified diet. It does not apply at group level, it also applies intra-group. That taking cereal also means that there are so many kind of cereals. Taking legume also means that all kind of amino acid will not be met only if you are daily eating mungi ki dal. You need to eat all those kind of things. So that is the complexity in case of millets. And I would say biggest thing, unless technological breakthrough happen, I think we will not have millets for increasing per capita consumption.
Yes, thank you, sir. So it is clear that Dr. Swaminathan and other friends who work in the area of nutrition, that PDS may not be the route to getting more millets in Indian diets. Because generally, you know, when we go to conferences like this, there is a demand that government should procure millets and distribute it under PDS. But I know it for sure that central government is unlikely to consider that, because even the procurement of wheat and rice through FCI and state governments put so much of burden on the government, not only the financial burden, but also the administrative burden. There are 2 CMDs of FCI in this room. Mr. Aayog Sinha is also here. I can assure you that we have sleepless nights because of the volumes we handle. So, sir, now we come to the Director General of ICAR, who has provided food security to India by coming up with better varieties of seeds and so on. We have seen breakthroughs in several crops, including sugarcane. So the ICAR system in the last 10 years has released some 2,600 varieties of different crops. Now, out of these 2,900, out of these it is claimed that some 2,600 are tolerant to one or more biotic or abiotic stresses. So this is the route to go, and I refer to the speech of the finance minister, I think it was in 2024, when she announced that there will be a competition mode of research in which the private sector will be in competition to the public sector, which means ICAR, for developing better seeds. So this was in her speech, but I have not read anything about this. I have not seen any tender issued by the government or ICAR inviting private sector to develop seeds. And as we know, the research in genetically modified seeds is completely stalled. So please tell us something about this, and also about the climate resistant varieties. Are so many varieties, 2,600 have been released. Is there any data showing area coverage under the new varieties? Is it, is that data being collected at the state level so that we know that the farmers are actually adopting those varieties? Dr. Jat, sir.
Thank you so much. I think what you quoted about the Honorable Finance Minister, and I think it was in the context of the new mission on the high-yielding seeds and high-yielding varieties, which was launched. It's under the approval process, and there is a room for open competitive calls for the private sector as well. So I think we are putting private sector also for competing with coming up with the varieties which are stress tolerant, which are nutrient dense. So it's in process. But what you have indicated, the 2,900 plus varieties and the climate resilience. If I take the example of some of the crops, let me take the example first in terms of the role of the climate resilient varieties and the technologies for building kind of resilience. And if you look at the past 3 years, despite all the odds in terms of the climatic risks, our production have gone up. Now, I'm not just attributing it to the variety, but I think the variety, the technology, the policies, everything have contributed, so there is no dip in the production despite all the climatic odds. So that's what the varieties are playing. Now the second point is how much of those varieties are in the field with the farmers. So if I take the example of wheat, for example, 60+% area of the wheat is under climate resilient varieties. Around 50% of the wheat acreage is under the biofortified varieties, the nutrient dense varieties. The issue is, and I think this morning I had a long discussion with the DG of the ICMR for an hour and a half, and we were discussing about agriculture, nutrition and health aspect, how we converge them together. One of the issue is we produce the biofortified wheat or rice or anything else, but once it comes to the procurement, we are bulking it. And then we lose the essence of the nutrition, and I don't know where that goes. I think, and Dr. Ramesh Sanji, I think a couple of times indicated what should be the mechanism to have that biofortified grain separately and other grains separately, and then if we can channelize that into the public distribution system. That's one part. The other part is, I think, still we are working on the agriculture side, developing the biofortified varieties, but the clinical studies, how much of that nutrition is bioavailable and how it is impacting. So for example, almost 50% of the women are anemic. That's a large ratio. And the intake, I mean, they need 18 milligrams a day, and intake is around 11, 12 milligrams a day, so there is a deficit. Now, if they are eating wheat or rice or anything else, how we ensure that they eat the biofortified one? Because I think changing altogether everything out of their food habit is challenging. So we have to fit into their shoe, and if we can channelize that, can really help us. But we have a strong program, and I think most of our program now on the breeding side of the varieties, our focus is essentially on developing the climate resilient varieties for all crops. We are not working on other aspects. So some are on the heat, some are on the drought, some are on the multiple stresses, some are on the salinity. So that's what we focus on the breeding side of the crop varieties.
Okay, thank you. So one of the very important aspects covered in this report is the relationship between environment, food, and agriculture, nutrition. Now, India's Environment Protection Act does not really refer to agricultural activities, even though we know that agriculture is quite a large contributor to greenhouse gases and so on. And I also know from my experience in Krishi Bhavan that the interaction between Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture is very poor. In fact, I would recommend those of you who are interested in this subject to read a book called Genetically Modified Democracy. Genetically Modified Democracy, in which, the history of approval of GM cotton has been discussed, how Ministry of Agriculture lost the case, the power to determine. Good is the coordination between environment, agriculture and food in NITI Aayog.
We have a practical example that convergence always helps. Many of you may not be knowing that aspirational district program, it was all through convergence. It's not that NITI got any money from central government to implement those kind of things. So I would say that this convergence is very, very important. And I was also going through this commission report. There is so much emphasis on food system. And you even talked about after 2030, what kind of goal should be picked up by UN, etc. And you alluded to this thing that the food system kind of things. So integration is must to get best results. If we keep operating in silos, the achievement will always be suboptimal. The achievement will always be much lower than what we can achieve. Yes, at our level, because we give only thinking, don't work on ground. Giving thinking is much easier than working on the ground. So we just suggest those kind of things that we need things. like that. In fact, if you look of approach of the government, if environment is to be addressed, if water is to be addressed, we have national sustainability mission, then its aspect related to agriculture are required to be implemented by Ministry of Agriculture. So those things are there. But these are the aspects which are very, very challenging, but which are very, very important. They are important for long-term survival. But since we faced food shortages, still our mindset is fixed on maximizing short-term without bothering about things like long-term. Partly that is psyche, but partly that is also built into the incentive structures. Like I hope I am not misunderstood. Let us take, you talked about emissions, that agriculture also contribute 14-15% to emission, and share of livestock and crop in the GDP is also 15%. So it is just that agriculture is as much emitter as any other sector of the economy. That is the interpretation. But if you are growing rice in the area which has high rainfall or lowlands, then you will find the additional emission will not be there. Because whether you grow rice there or not, emission in any case is going to be there once there is a standing water and organic carbon breaks and all that mechanism. But if you grow rice on those land where you are artificially making water to stand, there you look at without growing rice and with growing rice, what is the difference to emission? There is a very big difference. So I think if we are concerned about the long run, now the situation in terms of food availability, we are at a much better position. If I can share number with you, you people also would be knowing, now agriculture growth more than 4%. Population growth only 0.8%. If country in its collective wisdom decides that even if our growth rate is 2%, still our per capita food production will be rising at aggregate level. Still you will find improvement. So is it that now, without adversely affecting producers, we want to maximize sustainability goal, environment goals? Now India is in a comfortable position to explore these trade-offs without feeling any threat to food or nutrition security.
Okay, so Dr. Swaminathan, I wanted to ask you, and this is my last question. After this, I will request them to say anything they want. My last question is, you know, the government has been encouraging the production of maize for ethanol. Now we know that we are short on pulses, short on edible oils. NITI Aayog has produced several reports. We have Atmanirbharta mission and all that. How do you see this? You know, an area equivalent to Bihar's cropped area is now needed to cater to 20% ethanol. So as a health expert, what is your recommendation to NITI Aayog about the cropping pattern and the preference to maize as compared to pulses, etc.?
So I want to build on what Dr. Jat and Dr. Ramesh Chand have both said. I think Dr. Jat asked us question about synergies and trade-offs. Very important when we climate and development, and we shouldn't be pitting one against the other. And Dr. Ramesh Chand mentioned about convergence and the fact that, you know, he was saying we have sat down with DG, ICMR to look at, unless we look at it holistically in an integrated way, it is impossible to make decisions and answer the questions you're asking. Because on the energy side, you can make the argument that we have to move, and so we need biofuels, so this is a good thing to do. But if I, from the health perspective, say that today, you know, 60% of our disease burden is because of diet, poor diet. And the same INDIAB study I was talking about, they did an analysis of people who consume more carbohydrate as part of their diet and less. So they divided into quintiles. And so most of us are taking, you know, most of our calories are coming, 60-65% of calories are coming from carbohydrate. If you replace 5% of that with protein, either from plant, dairy or fish, significant reduction in all of these things, obesity, diabetes, and metabolic diseases. So if you project into the future, so you've got climate change on the one hand, you've also got the behavioral change in diet. You know, as Dr. Ramesh Chand was saying, that the aspirational diet for people is what they see on advertisements and what is being promoted by the corporates. Ultra-processed food, so the household consumption expenditure survey shows a 300% increase in consumption of ultra-processed food and ready-to-eat, both in rural and urban areas. I think that is very, I don't know how we're going to make, because that's a behavior change that we have to bring about. So you need interventions in many places. There are levers that government can use, obviously. There are the big social safety net. One can increase the amount of pulses and healthy oils in the PDS and encourage people to consume more of that. You can, of course, intervene in school meals and through the PM Poshan program, that is the ICDS, where you can make those meals healthier. How about adding a fruit to every midday meal? Seasonal, local fruit. The third is also to go from a centralized procurement and distribution that the FCI has been doing to more local at the district or block level. That will support farmers. It will reduce your cost because for storage and transportation, and it will also give local SHGs, and you know, you can procure for local schools and ICDS millets or whatever is a traditional food that people are used to eating over there. Big campaign on healthy eating will have to also be done, but affordability has to be kept in mind. And finally, I think the FSSAI has a role to play in front of pack labeling and also in taking action against false advertising of foods or additives which don't have any health benefit at all. In fact, we know many sugar-packed products are being sold as health foods or healthier options, which they are not. So there, the regulation can also play a big role. So this convergence has to happen, I think, and these kind of tough questions need to be put on the table. How much of things should go for palm oil cultivation? How much area should we be putting for biofuel? How much of it should go for pulses and legumes? Because we are deficient in both pulses as well as in healthier edible oils. Why should we be promoting palm oil if we can? We have so many oils in India that are traditional and much healthier oil options than palm oil. But there's no one single answer, you know, easy. So these are trade-offs. We'll have to decide, but I would say put the health of the people first to make these decisions.
Okay, thank you. So any questions? Mr. Jakar, you will have your number in the last. Yes, ma'am. No, please give her the mic.
I'm Professor Santosh Jain Pasi, public health nutritionist. So I just wanted to, of course, comment in general that we have been talking of the planetary healthy diet having a lot of vegetables and fruits, almost 50% of the plate. And same is recommended by the dietary guidelines of for Indians in 2024. So main point, we've been talking on the nutrients, but I think we should also think about the so-called non-nutrients, which unfortunately we had been saying to dietary fiber, phytochemicals and antioxidants. I would not like to call them non-nutrient, but unfortunately they do not fit into the nutrient category. So I believe that if we increase the intake of vegetables and fruits, all we agree is that nutritional deficiencies will be reduced and the so-called non-communicable diseases would be reduced. But the major problem is with their post-harvest storage and transportation. A huge loss is there in that. So what can be done to reduce that or minimize that? That is one. And I personally feel that instead of calling dietary fiber, antioxidants and phytochemicals as a non-nutrients, we could call them as health promoting, disease preventing dietary constituents, so that people can sort of, be little more aware of their significance.
Okay.
That is one issue. And
let us take only one question at a time.
Okay.
Okay. One more before I go to Mr. Jakar. One more. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can I? So I was just looking at a similarity that both in the case of land as well as human being. There was a traditional diet, and then we've gone to a modern diet. There it became chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and there it became, all the ultra-processed foods and fat and sugar and so on and so forth. So actually, the question really, Dr. Ramesh Chand, is that what can we do to get traditional diet back into both of these, which really means that, more, let's say, farmyard manure, more biologicals, to get our soil health back, which will also then maybe have an impact on nitrogen and phosphorus levels and leaching. And I think you already covered the area of food very adequately, Dr. Soumya, but really what more can be done from a governmental point of view to actually change the shift from our traditional diets, human beings, into the more modern diets and more attractive diets which are advertised, etc., so that let's say the incidence of pre-diabetic we're talking about can get reduced.
Okay. Mr. Jacob.
My question is to Dr. M.L. Jha. You talked about biofortified seeds. It's in a way being pushed by the multilateral agencies. There's nothing wrong with it. But the question is that the new seeds that ICR is developing, are we monitoring them for their nutrients? Because there is a belief that the traditional, as we shift to more hybrid seeds and different types of seeds, we are losing the nutrient value of the cereals, grains, fruits, vegetables that we're eating over the last 50, 60 years. So the question is not if we are losing nutrients, because that's, I think, so a fact, but the question is that is ICR going to do something about monitoring them? And this is a question that came up in the Center for Science and Environment discussion over 3 days, for which we really know if you're going to be monitoring them.
Okay. Over to you, Dr. Jha.
And the answer is yes. When we talk about biofortified varieties, there are quality traits, and all those traits are monitored. So there is no question on that. The only missing part is, as of now, I think the clinical trials of those biofortified varieties, whether the nutrients available in the grain is bioavailable to the people when they eat. And that's what we are discussing. So I think that part is not there yet, but otherwise we are monitoring every bit of the quality traits of the varieties we are breeding.
So, Dr. Ramesh Chand, people have a lot of questions, but we don't have time. I think Dr. Ramesh Chand will have the last word, and after that, sir, please stay back for lunch, for dinner. Because, there are so many questions for you. It is not very easy to reach you.
No, I think I'm most reachable person in NITI. Sometime one magazine, full magazine is Carbon probably devoted to NITI. I was the only person from NITI to give comprehensive interview. So I think I'm reachable, but we have to respect time. Everything cannot be addressed within 1 hour. So madam, you raised 2 issues. One is that if people consume more of fruit, vegetable, it is helpful for immunity, fighting against disease, etc. My belief is that every food contains some nutrition. It's not that sometimes in terms of imbalance, we start attaching more importance to one kind of food than the other kind. Like if I consume more one fruit, vegetable, I get more mineral, I get more vitamins, but I get much less energy, much less proteins. 1 kg of wheat contains nearly 3,000 kilocalorie of energy and 11-12% of protein. But even 100 kg of vegetable or fruit will not give me that kind of nutrition. So yes, in terms of particular nutrition, there can be superiority. But as far as nutrition in general is concerned, I will say that if there is calorie deficiency, probably it will create more problem than the deficiency because of the nutrient which there are in fruit and vegetable. So we have to keep balance. Not that one or the other, that balanced diet is very, 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 very important. Second question about waste, it is very important. And I will share one interesting example with you. I presented this example in UN Food System meeting in Nairobi. I there are 3 surveys in last 15 years which shows what is the food loss. I'm talking of food loss, not waste. They are different technically. So in terms of food loss, you will be surprised that the food which is most perishable in India, the loss is minimum, and that is milk. So we need to learn from marketing of milk that if in case of milk in India, the waste is less than 1% and it is much more perishable than fruit and vegetables. So what is that? That institution of milk marketing channel, cooperative, village level collection center, you immediately take it to chilling center and all those kind of things. So within the country, we have example where we have minimum loss in the world, and we also have example where we have world highest loss in the world. But like we can learn lesson that it is there. But in the case of India, we are sometimes exaggerating food loss also. In fact, in our case, शाम को आप देखिए वट एवर इवन क्वालिटी डिटीरियोरेटेड बनाना, वो कहेगा अब बनाना ले जाओ 10 रुपए में 1 दर्जन. So there are low income people वो ले जाते हैं. तो इंडिया में in fact we should aim at reducing the loss and waste. But still I would say that many of the number which you are seeing, they are just off the cuff. There are scientific study, सिफट है इनका. They have published 2 surveys. Third survey is by NABARD. Results are consistent. So you will find that the loss estimate vary from 0.5 to 12 or 13%. That is the situation, not 30%, 40% number which is picked up from air. Macro study shows that kind of things, and over time it is going down. You asked about traditional diet. Again, I would say that probably you are mixing 2 things. One is in terms of composition. That when I was a child, in winter we used to eat corn and bajra, at least more than half of the time. That was the situation. But now it is out. So that is in terms of composition, traditional diet. That's not difficult to restore. If consumer awareness is there, now things are available, one can have it. But is more difficult is the second part which you raised, the way earlier diet was produced. That made big difference. You gave example, fertilizer, ज़्यादा हो रहा है, use natural farming, etc. We are gradually moving into this direction. In some of my paper, I published the numbers also, that 7% area in this country by default is organic. Farmers don't use any chemical there, nothing. Many of them are not doing it consciously. The natural farming which is done consciously doesn't occupy more than 1% area. But overall, from cost of cultivation data, you can just see that on 77% of the land, no chemical, nothing is being used. Then I looked at the trade-off, yield kitna hai, if you reduce fertilizer suddenly, there are, to my mind, there are yield trade-offs. So considering demand, supply, etc., I feel that in next, say, 7 to 10 years, we can afford to increase area under chemical-free agriculture up to 20% without any threat to food security. Still, we will be food surplus. That export वगैरह will be available. But then we need to set up those supply channel. We need to put labeling. We need to do branding. That food may be containing organic, but whether it is genuinely organic, those are the kind of things. शायद yesterday paper or today's paper contained that. How people are selling non-organic in the name of organic. We need to move into that direction, and gradually things are happening. People are moving in that direction.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Jakar, you will be happy to know that we will finish on time so that Sunita Narayan and my friend Deepa and Dr. Reddy can have their session on time. Thank you very much. And we always have too many questions for Dr. Ramesh Chand, so obviously time is too short for that. Thank you.